Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Chelsea Kilpack, Senior Global Communications Manager at HireVue, and I am joined by James Ellis. James has written four books
It's
on
true.
employer branding. I every time I read it, I think surely that's a typo.
No,
Um,
trust
he
me.
is
I wish I had written fewer books sometimes. It's like, oh, why do I keep feeling the need to write a book? And I already have the fifth one kind of like mentally sketched out. There is something wrong with me. There's no question.
but that's part of why we have you here. So,
Oh,
four books, 220 podcast episodes that he's hosted. And if you are in the HR tech space, I think you look familiar because you've been on everyone else's podcast too.
I try. I try.
So I actually did not know James before this, but I saw him on with our friends at Career Crossroads talking about employer branding. And we were in the process of writing our 2024 candidate experience guide here at HireVue that just dropped yesterday, actually. And I said, I think that there's a good conversation to be had here about the way employer brand intersects, reinforces, creates that candidate experience. So
Mhm.
that's why we're here today. But to start, tell me about Employer Brand Labs. What is your actual title there since I kind of messed it up a
Don't
few?
worry about it. Look, it's me. It's a one man. It's a one person wrecking crew. It's me. But I feel weird putting the word founder. Like that feels like I'm putting on airs that I'm not prepared for. Not to put any. And I know a lot of founders. I'm like, you do you, girl. I mean, that's just not how I just don't feel it. So I just call myself the chief brander. Is really what it's about. Because all I do is think about how do I help companies brand themselves so that they can attract the kind of candidates, not that will hit the apply button, but will actually be thrilled to join and add a lot of value. So that's really what it's all about.
And you've worked with startups to Fortune 1000 companies. Um, Tell me a little bit like what does your work with them look like?
Well, I've been doing this for 10 years and I've kind of done it from the in-house point of view. I've done it from an agency point of view. I'm now doing it from I guess consultant is the best word kind of point of view. And I focus right now on smaller companies because look, I have a employer brand buyer's guide. It's got 26, 27 different agencies and consultants who do employer brand work. Sometimes exclusively, sometimes as part of a larger kind of HR, TA kind of focus. There's a lot of people helping a lot of big companies build their brand, but there's not many people really focusing on the companies under 2,000 people, the companies who think they're too boring or unsexy to have an employer brand. And that's really where I love to live because, look, I'm not going to tell AT&T what to do. You need an army of warrior lawyers to show up to AT&T store to get them to listen to anything you got to say. So there's no changing it. There's no moving the boat. A 500 person, I don't know, software company, video game company, a 700 person manufacturing company, I don't know, building appliances or retail. There's plenty of companies who are hiring where each new hire is crucial to their success. And there they are off on LinkedIn, posting the dreaded "we're hiring" post and getting no responses and wondering why. And it's like, because they're saying you sound like everybody else. You're saying the same things everybody else says. You've got to learn how to figure out what's useful and interesting about you and how to turn the volume up on it. And that's really where I live.
I love that. And you actually, this dovetails nicely, weirdly, into the findings of the report. So we surveyed just shy of 4,000 candidates in the US and the UK. And some of the themes that emerged, not all that surprising, is that people want stability and transparency. Look around in either markets, and that's just duh. Of course, that's what they're
Totally.
after.
Totally.
But something that really stood out to me is that 55% of respondents said they have no plans to leave their current employer. So hitting that apply button, getting the right people to actually leave a place that they're maybe hunkering down, it's more important than ever to have a good experience in employer brand.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Let's start with a 101. I love a level set. I'm going to ask the question, how does that employer brand differ from company brand? Should it, if you're starting this journey?
Okay. Normally, I like to kind of wander around conversations, but that's the most blunt question, and I have the most blunt answer for it. And that is there is a company and it has a brand. Full stop, end of paragraph, end of chapter, close the book, you're done. Now, if every company has a brand, consumer marketing looks through that brand to talk to their audience, consumers, prospects, et cetera, et cetera. Investor relations looks to that exact same brand to talk to institutional investors or VCs or whoever they're trying to get to invest. We look through that exact same lens to talk to people who might add value to our company, right? So if you are Facebook, for example, because I use them because they have a notorious employer brand reputation of move fast and break things, and occasionally the thing they break is democracy, but that's neither here nor there. We don't have to have that discussion just yet. That's a separate podcast. But if you say you're all about move fast and break things, you can't tell a different audience we're all about support, because you're moving fast and breaking things. You don't have time to support people. You don't have time to worry about the thing you just broke. You're moving fast. You're breaking more things. So that's a place where these things have to dovetail. And when the employer brand and the consumer brand, in fact, let's relabel the employer brand a little bit. And I'm going to steal a line from Shonda Zilich, and that is, let's call it a people brand, because it suddenly puts a fine point on, we are advertising, marketing, branding the people for the people. Now, has obvious recruiting benefits, but the real power is that you own the face of the company, the people who are doing the things, whether it's being the accountants at Deloitte or making shoes at Nike or whatever you're doing and everything in between. They are the face. They are the soul of the company. And if you're a consumer marketer and you're an investor relations person, and you don't know how to leverage the power of the people doing that, you got to go back to school. The thing is you've never had access to someone who owned it, nurtured it, maintained it, built it, structured it, aligned it to the larger brand. So you kind of went, it's messy, I'll deal with it later. Employer brand shows up and says, let me help you tap this amazing potential inside the company you already have by talking about the people who do the things, who make the things, who support the things, who sell the things. That's really where it is. And when you have a single brand approach, when employer brand does good work, it supports marketing. When marketing does good work, it supports employer brand, and all of it works. It's a rising tide floats all boats. There's only one brand in a company, and trying to pretend there's multiple brands inside a company is schizophrenic at best and a little psychotic at worst.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes everyone's job harder. As a comms person, I can say that definitively. Like, we can only tell the good story if the good story is real. We can't be saying something that is not true. It just, people see right through it. Nobody wants to read about that. So I see
Exactly.
a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, totally.
Just a reminder, yeah, drop your questions here. I do see one that is, why are so many employers ghosting candidates after interviews? And I'm telling you, as a person who runs organic social, I wish we had like the best answer for. I don't have an answer. James, maybe you do, but this is all over my feed. I'm seeing it everywhere I look.
Yeah, and
Ghosting is a real problem.
it's absolutely endemic. It's only getting worse. And I think if you change the survey and says we're going to talk to candidates and we're going to talk to companies, and we ask them, have you been ghosted and do you ghost people? The answers would have been wildly different, because companies don't think they're ghosting. They think they're doing good work communicating with their candidates because they're used to having all the power. 20 years ago, when recruiting was a different kind of beast, if you had a job, you had all the power, and you could dictate terms, and you could say, no, the resume has to look like this, and no, you have to show up for interview dressed like that, and you have to do you had all the power. Nowadays, the companies are like, please show up. I need you. Turns out we can't do the stuff if we don't have you. So please. And so the power dynamic has shifted. What has happened at the same time is that technology has shown up and said, hey, recruiters, you've got like 7,000 plates you're spinning, and I buy this. I'm not saying this is, I'm using that pejorative voice, but I'm not meaning to. I'm just simply saying, here's another character in our little story. Hey, recruiters, you got 7,000 plates you're spinning. Can we take some of the load off by automating some of that communications for you? And recruiters are like, thank you so much. The problem is most of those tools go straight to spam. There's a huge number, and there's an assumption that if we have a tool that sends the email, I can't say that I've ghosted you because I definitely had a tool that sent you a thing. Now, the candidate has a very different picture because that message went to spam. They never saw it, and they went, I got ghosted. So that's really where a good chunk of that conflict is. It's a misunderstanding of what's really happening in the market. And yeah, there are large swaths of recruiters who just think I've got so many jobs, I can't bother getting to it. And they are ghosting. I do see that raising higher and higher. I don't think there's a single core reason beyond using that technology. I think there's like 20 reasons that are adding to that little gumbo of problematic situations to make this a reality.
And I will say to Jessica that our chief data scientist, Lindsay Zulaga, likes to say, like, it's not personal. It really is just exactly what you're saying, a numbers game. Jessica, you probably didn't do anything to warrant being ghosted. It's just one person gets the job and you didn't hear back, and that's a real bummer.
And the second they put someone in the seat, Everyone else doesn't exist. They don't have
Yeah.
any value to add. And that's not a personal thing. That is simply you only have value to fill that seat. And the second they fill that seat, you have no value to them. So I apologize if that's incredibly blunt and getting in the power dynamic, but that's kind of the truth.
Yeah, that's the reality.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you come into a company, explain it to me like I'm absolutely new here. What's the foundations of a strong employer brand that you're gonna help me build at Company X?
Sure thing. And
Not to be confused with formerly Twitter.
yeah. I love that you use the word strong, because I'm a believer that there's no such thing as a good or bad employer brand. What you think is a good employer brand is a company you want to work for. Guess what? There are lots of people who go, ew, no, thank you. No, no, like Goldman Sachs, my favorite punching bag. No way. 100-hour work weeks, and like it's really, really hard and brutal and all that other fun stuff that everybody knows about. It's not a secret. I'm not beating up on them, telling the world some sort of trade secret. Everybody knows this. And they have zero problems filling those seats. There are plenty of people who go, I want that, because they know there's a pot of gold at the end of that particular rainbow. So there's no such thing as a good brand, because if I think it's terrifying and someone else thinks it's amazing, how can it be good? What a brand must be is strong rather than weak. And a strong brand is crystal clear about what you offer, why you offer it, what you're looking for, and how you're going to work well together. A la Goldman Sachs. There's no, hey, join Goldman Sachs. You're going to save the world and the pandas. It's going to be a lot of fun and there's going to be pizza. No, no one ever thinks that. No one believes that. They're crystal clear that this is a brutally hard job and this is what you're going to get. Everybody knows that. That is a strong brand. The Red Cross, what the Red Cross does is inverse to everything that is Goldman Sachs and is its own strong brand, because you know exactly what you're going to do. You know exactly what you're going to get. So my job is to figure out, how do you build a strong brand? And the value of clarity in a strong brand is that it shows how you're different from other companies. If every company is the same, if it's like standing at a Target or a Walmart looking at soap detergent going all and Era and Tide, and I guess there's that hippie brand down there in the corner. I don't know who buys that, but there you go. But they're all the kind of same. And how do you pick? What do you pick? You pick the cheap one. You pick the one you got a coupon for. They're all the same. But if you know one is perfectly suited for your clothes and you've seen it and you believe it and it's credible, it's not a choice anymore. It's the one you want, and the others you don't. That is what a company should be striving for. This is what you offer. This is people who want that can see that you are offering it. They believe it. It is credible. There's lots of proof points around it, and they see you, and then they see everybody else. And that is what a strong employer brand does. It helps candidates, the people you actively want to hire, understand the choice between you and everybody else, so that you have, at best, a functional monopoly over that thing that you offer. That is what a great employer brand is.
I love that. I'm like taking it in, because I think that, again, going back to the report, this idea of transparency. They want to know how long it's going to take to get through this,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it starts earlier. It is, I'm going to apply to a place where I know this process isn't lying to me. I'm going to get to the end and it's going to meet my expectations.
Yeah. You got to see an employer brand as very holistic. The reason why you don't want to work at perhaps your, I don't know, cable company is because you once had to call said cable company and order or cancel a service. And we're like, it's like beating my head against a brick wall. Do you want to work there now? No, you don't. You had you had a negative experience, and it's flavored your perception of that company. That's just how it is. You have a bad experience in an airline, you don't want to work there. You have a good experience in an airline, you're like, oh, I feel good about that company. If that recruiter shows up, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, great. So employer brand is everything a company does. What happens in a candidate experience is that the microscope shows up. The magnifying glass shows up. They are really leaning in and they're really looking at that. And while they see all the different touch points and experiences you've had, it slowly kind of incorporates and forms this idea in your head of your impression of blah, blah, blah. It's kind of soft. But the moment they apply and the moment they start to hear from the recruiter and engage with the recruiter and see the hiring manager, and this is the materials I'm given, and this is how well they're communicating, this is solidifying their perception of who you are. There is no point in time in which they are more actively absorbing what you are putting out to the world, right? That
Yeah.
post that said we're hiring, they ignored it. That all the stuff that you put out, all the really nice things. Hey, we volunteered at a school and we painted it. Good for you. That's all great stuff. Whew, right over their head. Up until the moment they go, I'm looking for a job, and it's a full lean in, and they're looking at stuff and they're listening at stuff, and they're going, huh? They asked that question and not that question. They are hyper focused on what you're saying. So don't treat the candidate experience as somehow separate from the larger picture of the employer brand, but this is the place where they are super aware and absorbent and open to seeing what you're saying. And they're gonna compare it to what they know, but they're probably more likely to kind of accept what you're seeing now. So I'm a big believer that candidate experience can't erase a million years of bad feelings about a company, but it can reinforce previously known understandings, or at least shape and influence what they've seen before. And that's really the power of a good candidate experience.
Yeah, agreed. I will never forget when I first got into this industry, hearing Jennifer Carpenter, the former head of talent at Delta, say design for the disappointed.
Yep.
Delta Airlines cannot piss off applicants who then need to book a flight that same day,
Yeah.
because you just can't untangle those experiences from the consumer brand.
100%. And Delta is one of my favorite examples of a company that has gone full in on one brand thinking. So if you're on a jetway on a Delta flight, and there's always a poster while you're waiting to enter the plane, right? It's really hard to tell if that's a buy a ticket poster, apply for a job poster, internal comms poster, investor relations poster. They're all kind of the same message, and they're kind of speaking that core idea of what Delta's all about to all of those audiences at the same time. And when you realize it's all intertwined like that, you're right. You can't pretend they're separate and try and speak out of both sides of your mouth. It does not work.
I'm gonna like clip that for social after. There's
Hi,
the
Delta.
headline. Yeah. We had somebody say on here, clear, concise, credible, and aligned with your target audience.
Mhm.
There's our summation of
Yeah.
everything you just said.
I call it specific, attractive, different, and real. So it's specific enough that people believe it, they understand it, it's credible, it's concrete enough. You're not saying, we care about our people. Say how much you invest in your people, all the different programs you have about your people. Prove it, right? Attractive meaning it's a thing that someone wants. Different meaning you're helping separate from other audiences and other kind of opportunities and options. And real meaning no bullshit. Just say what you mean, say what's real. And I don't want to use the authenticity word. I feel it's so fraught with all this baggage right now, good and bad. So I just focus on, look, avoid aspirational thinking. What are you really offering people now? So if you can nail down your specific, attractive, different, and real, you are really, and this is not, a hyperbole here, you are light years ahead of almost all your competition in how you're communicating to your candidates.
And this gets into what we want to talk about next, which is that ROI. There is real ROI on making an investment in this work.
Mhm.
Talk to me about that. Your experience, horror stories, success stories. Share some of that goodness with us.
Well, I'll say this. I think an employer brand, so if we say an employer brand is strong versus weak, how do you know it's strong? The second you can say, I can reasonably cut my ad budget by 10% because each ad saying something informative, useful, valuable, separating, differentiating, so I don't have to spend as much. Each ad, that ad is useful and more valuable and attracting the kind of people I want. That is the litmus test. That is the canary in the coal mine of, do you have a strong brand? Can you lower your ad spend by 10%? Can you lower your agency spend by 10%? That to me is how you know you've got it. Once you've got that brand, you see all sorts of powerful knock-on effects. When I was at Groupon, look, let's be fair, not the sexiest brand in the world. There was a time at which Groupon was like the place everybody in Chicago wanted to work for. That's not when I worked there. And it was well past its sell by date in a lot of levels. And so it was really hard to get people, especially technical people, especially developers and data scientists and QA people, to say, yeah, I'm not going to work at PayPal or Braintree. I'm going to pick Groupon. It was a tough sell. And we did really good work getting people to what I think of as the finish line. And that finish line is the offer, right? You
Yeah.
spent all this time, all this energy, all these ads, all these platforms and tools and communication points, and all this stuff is to get them to the moment of truth, the yes or the no. And that's when, I was talking to a hiring manager and I said, what's the process for the offer letter? I said, okay, well, we get the offer letter from Comp and Ben and we get it approved from HR and we get it's a process. I'm like, don't care. What does the candidate see? Oh, Well, the candidate, oh, that's interesting. The candidate doesn't hear from us for like a week. I'm like, interesting. And then I call them and I say, do you have time to talk? And they say yes. And I say, okay, we're thrilled to offer you this. And I went, congratulations. You have made that entire conversation about the number on that virtual piece of paper. Nothing else matters because you've made it all about that number. Now, we have a brand. He goes, yeah, I know. It seems to be helping. I'm like, thanks. That's great to hear. And we've embedded it in platforms and websites and ads and touch points on ATSs and all that stuff. Let's assume that what we've been talking about is attractive to them. It's why they clicked an ad. It's why they clicked a job post, right? They saw that brand idea and went, yeah, I'd like some of that. And they're interested in it. It's something they want. It's appropriate bait. And over the course of this candidate experience, we've reinforced that this is true. Look at all the ways this idea is true. Ask some questions about it. We'd love to show you about it. So that by the time we get to the so-called finish line, you don't say, here's the offer. You say, look, we know what you really care about is making an impact on small businesses around the world. That's why you click the ads. That's why you went through this process. And we are thrilled that when you accept this job, you will be able to make a real impact on small businesses. And that's why we're thrilled to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just that small change created a 17% drop in rejection rates.
Wow.
I mean, think of all the time and money you spent to get someone to say no. And had to go back to square one. I mean, that's just brutal. That's the worst. 17% less times. And that was like in a quarter. Like it was like flipping on a switch. And we're like, I mean, even I was shocked. I was like, I know this is going to work, but it's going to take a little time. What do you mean it's already working? Oh, wow. So I didn't even stick around to see what its final result was. But you saw amazing impacts because it's about seeing the bigger picture. It's about saying, this is why people want to work. Some people want transparency. Some people, what they're really asking for is, what should I expect in this company? Should I expect 24/7 boss slacking me every single day? It's going to be tough, but there's the reward. Is it going to be 9 to 5 and I close my laptop and don't have to think about it till 9 o'clock the next morning? Is it going to be all for one and one for all? Or is it going to be cover your back because there's a knife ready to get stabbed into it? What is this place really like? And when we say we want transparency, when we say we want understanding, that's what we want to know. And I think so many business leaders are so terrified of revealing some of that stuff because some people won't like it. I'm going to tell you right now, good. You didn't want to hire them anyway. Better to weed them out before they say yes and quit in 3 months, because that leaves you in your hat in hand, kind of toasted, right? You're done. Yeah. That's expensive. So better to let them know what they're getting into so they can make an informed choice. And the best part of that is when a candidate feels like they haven't been cajoled and hustled into or arm twisted into this job, when they feel like they had enough information on which to make an informed choice, they are thrilled to make that choice. They are thrilled to show up the first day. They have the right approach and the right attitude, and it drives value day one.
That's why this business is just so much fun. You're like the idea of like a person being excited for their first day of work just never gets old to me.
It really doesn't.
What a cool thing. Okay, so let's dive into the last bit here. You've differentiated the brand tactically. Obviously, we want to talk about technology and the tools it takes to get people to that offer, especially because the results of this report said that 32% of candidates will reject an offer. This shocked me. A straight up offer. Here's the money. Here's the benefits. People will say no if it took too long.
Yeah. Here's the reason why. If it took that long to do this thing, that, let's be fair, most of these companies are giving offers every 2 or 3 days, every day, every couple of hours, depending on the size of the company. If it takes this long,
and if they use HireVue, then they're offering super quick.
There you go. But good plug. But if this is how long it takes to get something done where it's obvious to all players involved the value, this is like the best case scenario. If this is the best you can do, no gracias, I'm out, right? This is how you treat people when it's like a first date. How you treat people on the first date is the best you're going to get treated in a lot of ways, right? Up until you build a strong relationship and get better. But really, you're trying to impress each other. If this is what trying to impress each other looks like, hasta la bye-bye, I'm done, right? And that is a big part of it. You should be showing, that's where employer branding matters. It's every part of the company, not just the ads, not just the job posting, not just the interview questions, but also the processes that say, if we're trying to tell the world that we're innovative, Why are we using ghastly 1980 level databases to manage and understand and communicate, God help us all, with candidates we are desperate to talk to? How innovative is that? Now, obviously, the company didn't build the ATS, but they selected it. They decided not to invest in a new one. They decided, you know what, it's good enough. Guess what? That is the fly in the soup of your 4-5-star meal. It's going to destroy any positive will you have built and invested in and created. Really, you are measured so often as a company at your worst point. Think about that. If you spend all this time on the razzle dazzle and the song and the dance and the this and the that, and hey, let's give you cookies for interviewing. And I've had that happen. Let's be fair, that works. Look, you can spend all you want, but if if there's a part that's worse, it's the offer acceptance process. If that isn't good, it changes and colors every other positive experience you've ever had. So it's not about how do you raise the best, it's about how do you raise the floor. So there's no slow, no bad, no kind of like lingering doubt, no red flag that makes people say, I'm going to say no. Because in a lot of ways, they're not saying no to the time. They're saying, oh, I see what this red flag is. Oh, that's a pretty deep red flag. Guess what? That changes my math on me. There you go.
Yeah, really fantastic. We are coming up on time. James, thank you so much for doing this. You're just responding to my cold LinkedIn outreach and saying, please come talk to me.
Have mouth will travel is really, that's what my business card should just say.
Well, I don't know if you watch Hot Ones, but I want to do a Sean Evans here. Tell the people what you've got going on. How can people get in touch with you? Let's give a plug here.
A lot of stuff going on. I will say my most recent book, 18 Laws of Employer Branding, just came out on audiobook. It's available on Spotify. So if you have like a Spotify premium, it's free. It's a short book. It's a fast listen. I think it will change how you look at employer branding and recruiting in a broad sense. It's not filled with specific tactics. It's really about how do you change your perceptions so that you can do more good. But really, all the stuff I do, the class on LinkedIn, the class on AI, the newsletters, the podcast, all that stuff, go to employerbrand.ing, employer branding. All my resources are there. The books you have to pay for, 1 or 2 classes you have to pay for, but everything else is 100% free. So if you think employer branding is interesting and you want to start to dig into it, that's where I'd recommend you go.
Fantastic. I'm going to drop that in the comments along with our 2024 Candidate Experience Guide. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. James, it was great talking to you.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks, Chelsea.
Yep. Bye now.
Bye.